The trick with pride is the mechanism by which people try to get better at things because you have like a little bit of pride in your work or in your appearance or in something you said or something you made, and therefore you try to do a good job at it. You try to improve, and that is sort of why we have all of Western civilization now, is this pride we had in various aspects of our culture, or things we made or things that we did, that everyone sort of invests in, or the just one person invests in and makes something great. Like every great invention ever that was ahead of its time came about because one guy was like super proud of how smart he was and clever for working on this thing. It was a singular pursuit, and they didn't even necessarily need to do it for like personal glory. Even the desire for like the betterment of all humankind is in a way a prideful pursuit if you're doing it like by yourself, right? You're like, I'm the guy who's gonna feed everyone when I figure out how to do these GMOs, or whatever the case is. Um, so it's that drive for improvement that is where pride stems from. And then if you overdo it, that's when you get like vain and egotistical and thinking too much about what the label is instead of what the content is and what the quality is. And that's sort of where pride is overdone, where like the way pride is almost like when you care too much about what other people's opinion of you is over, it's got to match your own high opinion. And then that's when like pride messes with you, when like you won't do what's better for a situation because you have to maintain your particular idea of who you are so that other people can see you the same way that you see yourself, if that makes sense. Like you won't compromise your personal vision of yourself for whatever reason. Um, that's tied, like we said, to identity. Who you are, what you stand for, what you won't. Lots of politics these days hinge on patriotism, which is a kind of pride. Uh, lots of people have regional pride, local pride, industrial pride, like if you're proud of the line of work you're in. It's not so much of that now because people don't have lifelong careers in one particular avenue, but it used to be that way where, my grandfather worked in this factory since he was a boy. He worked there until he retired, that kind of thing. That doesn't really happen anymore, but it used to be that way. People instill this sense of identity into things that are not connected with them, and their sense of pride becomes associated with these things. Another way to look at pride is status. Labels that mean a certain level of status, people are proud when they have access to those labels in a way that, like people who aspire to have certain things, like, oh, I got to have me a Gucci purse one day. People who aspire to that kind of thing can do without it. But if someone has lived a lifestyle their whole life where they've had those things at that level, it really messes with their pride when all of a sudden that goes away. So like if they go broke and can't afford these nice fancy things anymore, it's very damaging to their sense of identity because their sense of identity was wrapped up in these things that really were not themselves. They were just these labels, right? But using that concept, obviously you can create aspirational labels that people want to have in their life because it says something about them. Almost every lifestyle brand is really about finding an identity that's not currently being served with merchandise they can buy that supports that identity, if that makes sense. So that's why you can have, like that skateboard store I went to, huge store, only one wall of it had actual skateboards. The rest of it was clothing and shoes and hats and stuff to support the lifestyle, stuff you didn't even need to have an actual skateboard to buy. And I'm sure a lot of the people that shop there don't actually skate in any meaningful way. But there's a look to that. There's an attitude that is being served by the graphics on those t-shirts and with the cut of the clothes and the way the shoes are. So like skateboarding shoes, I didn't even realize that they were actually developed for riding on skateboards. But like when I was younger, the was it the Converse One Star? That was like a popular kind of shoe that like everybody wore because that was just like a popular kind of shoe. But those are flat bottoms for skateboarding. Like the grips are equal across the whole bottom part of the shoe because you're not ever like standing on your toes like you do when you run, like in a running shoe. So that's why those shoes have flat bottoms the way that they do for maximum grip. They were designed for skateboarding. And then it's just like prior to that, like basketball sneakers were really popular, which they have a certain look to them. But the reason they're shaped the way that they're shaped is because they're good at, you know, like you run on the tips of your, on the what do you call them, like the pads of your feet. So that's where the massive grips are, and then there's not so many where the arch of your foot is, and then there's more on the heel, because that's how you're running. You don't need even grips on your whole foot. In fact, that would actually slow you down. But that's just to say these factors, like how many, like when I was growing up, it was like so many kids I went to school with would be like wearing basketball jerseys, and they didn't play basketball. They just thought basketball was awesome. Said something about them. Their identity was wrapped up in it. Their pride is wrapped up in these teams and these players, and supporting them in that way. And like how many people you know get like super mad when like their sports team loses? Like did you bet on them? No. Like what? Like why do you care? Like why do you like involve yourself personally in their victory and then get like so bummed when they don't win? What does that have to do with you? And it's pride. That's pride pulls people in, and it gets people involved, and it gets people to feel like whatever it is that you're selling is part of their identity. And most people wouldn't think of it this way, but like, for example, Apple users have pride in their computers in a very, very bizarre way. In fact, in one comment thread on Facebook, all I said was basically Steve Jobs was kind of a dick. And this guy like blew up, like went nuts on me about how like he was like an innovator, and that's the reason Apple is so advanced is because he was a genius and he was ahead of his time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, he's just a dude. Like he stole some ideas. He was in the right place at the right time. He's a tyrant and makes people work really hard for him, like we talked about, right? All I said was that like he's not like Buddha or anything, you know. Like when you're typing on your iPhone, like some poor Chinese kid put that together in a factory that's so terrible they have nets installed around the building to keep people from dying when they jump off the roof. Like he's okay if you like computers, but he's not Gandhi, is all I was saying. But like you would think I had told this dude his dad was an asshole or something. It's just Steve Jobs. Like he's not even related to the guy. But his sense of pride is so wrapped up in that concept that he took it personally when I didn't jump in on it. And pride is one of these great ones where, like even the Cult of Copy, I have pride in it as a community, and I think that makes the members take pride in it also, which is why when spammers show up and spam the group, everybody jumps all over them. Like quality control is everyone's responsibility because everyone takes pride in this thing we built together. So pride is very, very powerful in trying to motivate people to do things. You can give people a sense of pride in what it is that they're working on. You can do insane things. Like, in fact, I didn't even think about this until just now. Earlier in the week, that 80s movie Gung Ho with Michael Keaton and Long Duk Dong from 16 Candles, where it's basically like a car factory gets shut down, and they go wine and dine these Japanese investors to build a Japanese car factory there to save the town. And it's like a super 80s thing because like Japan's not the economic superpower that they were in the 80s that we thought they were going to like dominate forever because they like kicked our ass in electronics and cars and all this manufacturing. But there's these scenes about like the severe management training where like you have all these shame ribbons taped to your shirt and they're making you jog in place and dudes are yelling at you about how terrible you are and how much you suck. And like if it turns out later in the movie they're yelling at him because like he thought the factory workers needed a break and their production level dropped, and he like let them down. Like they were so mad at him as a manager because their pride was so wrapped up in their work. And I thought that was very interesting. That's not necessarily the feelings people have today about their work, but that was an interesting cultural thing to see a country that had come to dominance in manufacturing after having their ass kicked in World War II because they made the workers take pride in their work. Like you would go in and like do morning exercises with all your fellow coworkers like you were in the military or something every morning in the factory yard, and then come in and work and work and work, and you don't listen to music and you don't talk, and it's about production. It's basically treating people like machine parts. And if you didn't have the goal of being the best possible part that you could be, then you didn't have the adequate pride in it. Your pride was about the company. All you cared about was the company. As a cult leader and as a person who studies cults, I'm very interested in movements and organizations that can make that kind of insane loyalty come out of people because they feel personally tied up in whatever you're doing. Like their sense of identity is wrapped up in it. That's loyalty. That's repeat customers. That's brand recognition. You know what I mean? When people's own sense of self, their sense of identity is wrapped up in what you're doing, they're proud to drink Coca-Cola instead of Pepsi, and they think people who drink Pepsi are bullshit. That's insane if you can get that kind of loyalty for sugar water. I mean, brown sugar water, of which the other kind has been proven again and again that people in blind taste tests can't tell the difference between the two. So that's pretty awesome when you can be like, well, I'm better than that because I drink Coca-Cola and not Pepsi or RC Cola or Tab or whatever the case may be. That said, we are at the end of the hour. We've gone a little bit over, but we're going to save the remaining 3 deadly sins and their opposites to discuss next week, ways that you can use